As we speak, the future of the FDA as the highest authority in the country for ensuring the safety, efficacy, and security of drugs, that authority is at risk. That is because inside that courtroom in Amarillo, Texas, anti-abortion groups are asking federal judge Matthew Kacsmaryk to force the FDA to rescind its approval of mifepristone, a safe and effective abortion medication that has been used in the U.S. for more than 20 years. Now, we don't know how the judge will rule, but this case has already opened the door to two very serious questions. One, what is the role of the courts in reviewing the FDA's approval of drugs? And secondly, what are the implications for other drugs being taken off the market because conservatives find them controversial? In Florida, for example, Governor Ron DeSantis has launched a public health policy committee to counter public recommendations from the FDA and the CDC on COVID vaccines. Vaccines that were approved by the FDA have been safely administered to over 269 million Americans and have shown to reduce the spread of COVID and the risk of severe illness and death. In Idaho, Republican lawmakers are going even further. They introduced a bill last month that would criminalize the administration of mRNA vaccines, as in all types of mRNA vaccines, not just those for COVID. And that could include FDA-approved drugs with mRNA technology like vaccines for rabies or the flu. And then there are the 97 bills in 27 states that would ban gender-affirming care, and that includes hormone therapy, which, by the way, is also commonly used in menopause. And then, finally, there are Republican efforts to target birth control. In 2021, conservative Republicans in the Missouri legislature tried to block Medicaid funding from going to groups including Planned Parenthood. In the fine print, the lawmakers further targeted specific forms of emergency contraceptives, often sold under the name Plan B. It is a medication that was approved by the FDA back in 1999. If a Texas judge sides with conservative groups to block the use of a drug that has been safely used for over 20 years, what is to say that any drug that runs afoul of conservative principles stays safely on the shelf? Joining us now is New York Times columnist and MSNBC contributor Michelle Goldberg. Michelle, it's always good to see you. And I don't want to be an alarmist here, right? I don't want to say the sky is falling, but the precedent that this Kacsmaryk case could set if he does, in fact, order a preliminary injunction or withdrawal of the FDA's approval of mifepristone could be profound across pharmacies across the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's, besides the impact, the immediate impact on women and people who need abortions, it's just there's a couple pieces. There's the utter lawlessness of it, right? I mean, I think that when the Supreme Court refused to enjoin Texas from their Abortion Bounty Act, SB 8, which, was such a violation of what was constitutional precedent at the time. For those who aren't that familiar, that's the one that effectively criminalizes the act of helping someone seek or get an abortion. Right. And it was such a kind of a blatant end run around Roe, which at the time was the law of land. And the legal arguments for it were so outrageous. And the Supreme Court basically said, we don't care. I think it shocked a lot of people, even pro-choice people who were very cynical about the Supreme Court, thought, well, they can't possibly allow that to stand. But it was really a sign, I think, that kind of all bets are off, that these people have been put into these various courts to do the bidding of the far right, and that's what they're going to do. And the legal arguments are almost irrelevant. And, if they're irrelevant for abortion, I wouldn't be surprised if they were irrelevant if they try to bring up a case against Plan B. I think it's also interesting to note that they have been one of the anti-abortion side's arguments in this case before Kacsmaryk is about the Comstock laws, those old laws that were used to ban
the
mailing of contraception, the mailing of birth control, just information. They basically want to sort of resurrect the Comstock laws and say that they apply here. And there's a lot more. There's many things besides abortion pills that the Comstock laws could apply to.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's coming at this particular moment where the right is emboldened by the Dobbs decision, right? The Kacsmaryk ruling could have a profound effect on how they see the courts as tools to do what they can't do legislatively. And I wonder if given the zeal that the right has to punish and marginalize members of the LGBTQ community in particular, it concerns me when I think about this landscape that, drug therapies that are used specifically in transition or hormone therapy or gender-affirming care, that feels like it's ripe for at least some kind of lawsuit, if not an actual legal success here, to get that stuff out of doctors' offices, out of pharmacies, where it's helping people who need it.
Right, and one of the questions here is whether whether states can just kind of disregard or overrule the FDA. I mean, one of the consequences of Dobbs has just been this total fracturing of the legal landscape, where you cross a state border and you're in a totally different legal regime when it comes to your body. And so, yes, well, I think we're already seeing states banning hormone therapy, not just for minors, but for, people 18, 20, 21. I think that for the same reason that misoprostol, the second drug in the medication abortion regimen, is a little bit safer than mifepristone because it has other uses. It's also used for ulcers. The same, I think, is true of the drugs that are used in transition.
That's the insurance policy.
Right. That, puberty blockers are given to kids who have premature puberty. That's what they were originally developed for. Hormones are used for, aging.
For menopausal women.
Right. So whether actually Republicans are going to want to ban testosterone when presumably some of them
that's the golden ticket.
That's, I think, is the question.
But it's also reflective of this very, very distressing trend of the courts denying settled science. Right? I mean, I think we can't, the FDA approved these drugs. They are safe. They are effective. There are case studies to prove that. There is a wide body of evidence. And yet you have these Christian fundamentalist justices who seem to want to throw science away in the name of Christian doctrine.
Well, look, I think it's been a very long history on the far right of creating these alternative institutions, alternative legal institutions, alternative medical institutions, this whole sort of library of lies that, not just settled science on vaccines, settled science on evolution. There's a whole alternative reality that they have been very fastidiously constructing and are now in a position to impose on everyone else.
It's not just legislatures, it's now the judges themselves.